All right. It's been a while since I've taught. It's kind of weird, but I'm really excited about it too. So I hope that I can do under the circumstance, the best possible job with what I'm given. All right. And I hope I can make history a little more interesting and exciting than Michigan Virtual. So let's start with our first lesson. Let's get to Germany here. Okay. So our first lesson in World History B is going to be the nation of Germany being built. All right. So, nation building. We're at a point in history now where we're starting to see the rise of modern nations. All right. So you're looking at the unification efforts by Germany's Otto von Bismarck and Kaiser Wilhelm. All right. So let's just get all this stuff here first. Okay. So we're in the early 1800s, which is your 19th century, and at this point in history, people are speaking the language of what we now know as Deutsch or German. But they're scattered all around different loosely organized states in Europe. There's no country of Germany yet. They're speaking the language of German, but they're not unified as a country yet. There's different various states. And if you look at the map, I mean, they're all over here. There's some disunity. So you have these different areas where Germany's kind of loosely put together. All right. So that's the background there. They're speaking the language, but they're not unified yet. So 1806 to 1812. You don't need to know the dates. Just kind of some context here. Napoleon invades and he conquers these German lands. All right. Napoleon goes all the way from France. He goes through Germany into Russia, and he conquers these areas. And they're kind of temporarily unified under Napoleon, who's from France. And under the reign, Napoleon organized these German states into this thing called the Rhine Confederation. That's kind of a bigger idea there, okay? So pay attention to that. This is the kind of the first putting together Germany called the Rhine Confederation. And it's aligned to these German states. So they're speaking a language, and now they're kind of put together for the first time ever under the Rhine Confederation. That's the start of the building of Germany. Go figure, by a Frenchman, by circumstance, all right? So here's the area of Germany. Okay, I am of German descent. I'm sure a lot of you have German blood in you as well, being from West Michigan. So, all right, here's modern day Germany, and you can start to see, if you go back here, you can kind of see the shape of Germany a little bit, these loosely organized states, and this is what's going to turn to modern day Germany. So the blueprint's been set. All right, so as you know, Napoleon is this vast conqueror of France, and eventually he tries to bite off more than he can chew, and he's defeated. And once Napoleon is defeated, there's a meeting where Europe tries to put everything back together, and that's called, an important term here, the Congress of Vienna. And the Congress of Vienna is putting Europe back together after Napoleon's been defeated, so it's kind of like reassembling a puzzle and determining what states are which. And they create this thing called the German Confederation. And the German Confederation is a really weak alliance of German states. And the weird scenario is it's kind of being watched over by Austria. Austria is a country very similar to the culture, ideas, and language of Germany. Consider Austria as like the big weak brother to Germany. Germany's a relatively new idea, this German Confederation. And this other country, very similar to it, it's like the big brother, but it's a weaker brother. And the two, they get along at times, and they don't get along at times. So Germany is not going to like the idea that Austria is kind of overseeing this upstart new country. It's kind of loosely been put together. All right. So big picture here, it's really the Congress of Vienna that really also enables the start of Germany, known as the German Confederation. And Austria is going to kind of oversee this very young nation that's put together, all right, after the world was torn apart by Napoleon. All right, so here's the big person you got to pay attention to. All right, Otto von Bismarck. Bismarck has these vast dreams of strengthening Germany, making it a strong, dominant Central European country, and he's going to achieve it. And he is an interesting character in history. So Bismarck is the chancellor. Chancellor is how necessarily say like the ruler of Prussia. Now, when we say Prussia, Prussia is located over here. Right? Prussia is not Russia. It's a German area, so Prussia, right? So he's over here, and he's leading the drive really to unite the German states, but he wants to make sure that it's under his area, his Prussian influence. So the way they do things in Prussia, he wants to make sure that all of Germany is really controlled in his way and his culture. All right. So go figure, a phone call during a lecture. All right. Go figure. So in order to pull this vast unification off and the strengthening of Germany, he's going to use this term called realpolitik, or real political like circumstance. And you're just smart. You're using politics based on the need of the states. You're assessing a scenario, and you're using politics, and you're using your smarts to achieve it. All right. So in order to really make Germany a strong country, the first thing you need is a strong military. All right. So he's going to aggressively pursue a foreign policy that's going to input a large emphasis on production of weapons for Germany. And they're having the Industrial Revolution. They're able to put out a bunch of weapons and supplies for war. And that's your first goal. If you're going to be a strong country, you need a strong military. All right. And then over the next 3 decades, Bismarck is going to lead Prussia into 3 wars. And these wars, which are, Germany shouldn't have won, but they win all 3. And it's this amazing military combination of pride, nationalism, production, and just the idea, this forcefulness to put Germany together is successful. It's highly unlikely, but it happens. Right? So here's Prussia over here in this area, and he wants to unify all of Germany into one, but he wants the culture and the values of Prussia really to be the dominant values that makes a modern Germany. So Bismarck. This is a critical idea. You're probably going to see it in one of your first quizzes here. He gives this famous speech called the Blood and Iron speech. Blood, because blood is going to have to be shed in war and violence. And iron is this new idea of the Industrial Revolution, of iron, of military industrial might. And those 2 things put together, the blood, the Germans who are willing to fight, and also the manufacturing, you put it all together, that is what's going to drive this new upstart Germany. He delivers this famous speech called the Blood and Iron speech. Blood and Iron. All right. So here's the actual primary text, what he said, the translation from German to English so we can read it. By the position of Prussia in Germany, we will not be determined by its liberalism, but by its power. Prussia makes concentrate its strength and hold it of its favorable moment, which has already come and gone several times. Since the treaties of Vienna, there's the Treaty of Vienna, our frontiers have been ill-designed for a healthy body politic. Not through speeches and majority decisions will great questions the day be decided. That was the great mistake of 1848, 1849, but by blood and iron. And as we break this thing down, he's saying it's not through like politics, talking, and maps. It's going to be through blood and iron, in which Germany is going to create itself. So you see that movement. Like they will make their own history through war and violence. That's what he's going to carve out. Right. So let's start to take a look at the first series of wars. So Bismarck creates an excuse to attack Austria in 1866. Remember, Austria is the same country that's kind of in charge of overseeing Germany. And Bismarck is a master of manipulation. He creates an excuse for Germany to be like, oh, we were attacked. Now we can attack Austria. You're going to see that play out many times in German history. All right, creates an excuse. And we call this the Austro-Prussian War. It's something I would definitely focus in on for your study. You'll see it on your assessment. The Austro-Prussian War lasted 7 weeks. Usually when we talk about war, we're talking about a series of years. This is a 7-week war where Germany, this upstart Germany, annihilates Austria. And at this point in history, whenever you win a war, you take land. So Prussia wins, and they take control of more states under absolute German control. So you win in combat, you take land, and that's exactly what happens here in the Austro-Prussian War. A war instigated on an excuse for Germany to go to war with Austria, and it's an incredible success, an amazing victory for Germany. All right, so that's the Austro-Prussian War. All right, the next one. Germany and France are right by each other, and they oftentimes fight over this very lucrative area known as the Alsace-Lorraine, where there's a bunch of resources. So France is looking at Germany, which is on the rise, and they don't like it. All right, they don't like it, and there's going to be a conflict between the Frenchies and the Germans. And Napoleon III, not Napoleon the First, Napoleon the Third, which I believe is Napoleon the Third is a descendant of Napoleon, is going to be the ruler of France, and Otto von Bismarck is going to be the guy in charge of Germany's battle. All right, so there's this growing tension between Prussia / Germany and France, and it's going to lead to this term here, the Franco-Prussian War. Franco, just associate with France, Franco-France, and Prussia, don't think Russia, think Germany. So it's the French-German War of 1870, all right? I'm really mad. Napoleon's not too happy about the rise of Germany, all right? So once again, it's Bismarck who's going to manipulate the circumstance to get a favorable outcome. Bismarck edited the telegram and made it seem that William I of Prussia was insulted by the French ambassador. Let me break that down for you. William is the ruler of Prussia, even though Bismarck is kind of the guy in charge. So William is a figurehead. He's like the Queen of England right now. So William is the figurehead of Prussia, and he edits a telegram making it seem that William I of Prussia had insulted the French ambassador. So he makes this thing up. A German's insulting a French ambassador. Completely made up scenario, right? Well, the French are all mad about it because their pride has been damaged. So Napoleon III of France declares war on Prussia, and it's exactly what the Germans needed. They wanted a scenario where they would be instigated, they have reason to go to war, and they get it. France rushes into war with upstart Germany because they think they can win against this upstart nation, all right? That's not the case. The Germans just wiped the floor with the French. And again, at this point in history, when you win in history, you get more land, and the Germans take land from France. So they expanded their empire or their country once again, all right? And the French army is always a laughingstock of military history, poorly organized, badly supplied, and they're easily defeated by this upstart Germany. Right? That is the Franco-Prussian War. So you got the Austro-Russian War, Prussian War, you got the Franco-Prussian War, and that's victory for Germany and victory for Germany. All right. So, delighted by the victory in the Franco-Prussian War, German princes persuade William I really to take the title of Kaiser. So this guy who's a figurehead is now elevated to the idea of an emperor. Kaiser, the translation of German is English just emperor. And they make William I the emperor. Now, it's this really smart move because when you're in charge, you get a lot of heat. And Bismarck doesn't want to really deal with all of the political issues, the issues of government. So by having William I, who's a German, a Prussian German, William's going to deal with all the issues, all the heat, and Bismarck is going to be behind the scenes really managing things but not having to deal with the issues. But this is when William II becomes known as the Kaiser of Germany, which you'll see play out in World War I later on. All right. So this is what they call this is the Second Reich. The First Reich goes all the way back to Germany in the Dark Ages. The Second Reich is the rise of this modern German state, and the Third Reich, you're going to hear Adolf Hitler declare Germany the Third Reich in the 1930s and 1940s. So this is the Second Reich, the Second Empire of Germany that's been created in this time frame. All right. But truth be told, the real power is really in the hands of Otto von Bismarck. He's manipulated every scenario. He's created circumstance, and he's lucked out. He's won. He's created a dominant central power of Europe. All right. So. All right, so it's kind of recap for you. All right, this is just pretty simple. Which country led the German Confederation? Try to answer that on your own there. All right, just kind of check. What was the name and purpose of the economic union that Prussia created? Check. Who became the Chancellor of Prussia? For realistic politics based on the needs of the state is called what? 5, what's the name of the famous speech that established Prussia's foreign policy direction? And then 6, well, why did Bismarck want to annex several German states? If you know the answer to these 6 questions, it's kind of a way to check in. Just make sure you kind of got that from the lecture. Feel free to look through the notes. But if you can understand these 6 big ideas, you're in really good shape. All right, moving forward to our first assessment. All right, that was 1. It only gets better from here. All right, so with that, review your notes. I'll have it presented online, and you're in good shape.